Imagine you are driving down a main avenue. You listen to the radio, think about dinner, and suddenly, the windshield disappears. It's not that it breaks, it's that your eyes stop sending information to the brain. The first 5 seconds are of absolute disbelief. It's a stroke, you think. I've fainted. But the sound brings you back to a much more terrifying reality. The screeching of tires, the twisting metal, and the screams emanating from neighboring cars tell you that you are not alone in your darkness. In this first level of chaos, the impact is purely mechanical. The modern world is built on movement, and that movement requires vision. On the highways, the cascade effect begins with a simple slam of the brakes. One car crashes into another, and that one into the next, creating carpets of scrap metal that block the vital arteries of the cities in less than 60 seconds. The traffic lights keep changing color, green, yellow, and red, dictating orders to a world that can no longer obey them. In the hospitals, the tragedy is silent but immediate. A cardiac surgeon, with a patient's chest open, is left with hands suspended in the void. The nurses drop the instrument trays. The panic in the operating rooms is not one of screams, but of a frozen paralysis. Patients waking up from anesthesia believe the operation went wrong, that they have gone blind due to a medical error, without knowing that the doctor by their side is feeling the walls desperately searching for the exit. The initial human reaction is isolation. The human being, when faced with the loss of sight, tends to crouch down, to make themselves small, to look for a solid surface to cling to. In the glass offices of New York or Shanghai, thousands of people kneel on the carpets, frantically touching their desks, searching for their phones. But here the first great barrier appears. Our screens are tactile. Without sight to guide the finger to the correct icon, the most advanced device of the 21st century becomes a useless glass brick. You try to call emergencies, but you only manage to open random applications or lock the device after several failed attempts. The silence of the engines. Our civilization is not an autonomous entity, it is an organism that breathes through monitors, pressure indicators, and levers. By losing our sight, we have severed the nerves that connect the human brain to the steel muscle of global infrastructure. The sky, once a symbol of freedom, transforms into the stage of an inevitable tragedy. At this moment, there are approximately 10,000 commercial planes in the air. Autopilot systems maintain altitude and heading, but a landing requires a perfect visual choreography between the control tower and the cockpit. Air traffic controllers are standing, headsets on, listening to the panic of the pilots over the radio, but they are unable to read their radar screens. Flight 714, I cannot see you, I don't see my screen, is the mantra repeated on all frequencies. Without guidance from the ground and without eyes in the air, planes become high-tech metal tombs. Some pilots attempt emergency landings relying on touch, ending in catastrophic disasters that are heard like distant thunder on the peripheries of the cities. Others simply fly in circles until the fuel gauge, which they can no longer see, reaches zero. In the heart of the metropolises, the infrastructure begins to cough. Elevators have become isolation cells. Millions of people are trapped between floors, pounding on metal doors in absolute darkness, not knowing if the building above is burning or if someone will come to rescue them. Public transport, the city's network of veins, grinds to a halt. Subway trains are locked in tunnels. Thousands of passengers climb down onto the tracks, attempting to walk on electrified rails they cannot see, guiding themselves only by the heat of the walls or the sound of rats that, unlike us, move with an advantage in the shadows. However, the most critical failure occurs in the power plants. Most people assume that electric light is automatic, but the grid is a delicate balance of load and demand that requires constant human supervision. Operators in nuclear, thermal, and hydroelectric plants depend on screens showing reactor temperatures, steam pressure levels, and grid frequencies. Without eyes to monitor these variables, automatic safety systems begin to trip. The first symptom is the flickering of light bulbs. Grid frequencies begin to oscillate wildly because no one is adjusting production to the plummeting demand. In control rooms, audible alarms become a deafening white noise that no one can turn off because they cannot find the buttons. The cascade effect manifests here with mathematical cruelty. One substation overloads and shuts down, that load is transferred to the next, which also fails. Little by little, the cities begin to truly turn off. Biological darkness meets electrical darkness. The thirst of the invisibles. 12 hours have passed. The paralyzing fear of the first few minutes has been replaced by a primary biological need that does not understand catastrophes: thirst. In a world designed for comfort, we were never aware of how many steps separate us from survival. Now, those 10 meters between the bed and the kitchen have been transformed into an invisible minefield. The home, once a safe refuge, is now a trap. Without sight, furniture becomes treacherous obstacles. A low coffee table is a blow to the shin that knocks you down. A wrinkled rug is a fracture risk. People crawl through their own hallways, feeling walls that suddenly feel foreign, desperately searching for the faucet. But when they finally reach it, many encounter a terrifying reality: the sigh of the pipe. A metallic, hollow sound, and barely a few drops of cloudy water before the flow dies. Here, the cascade effect hits the water infrastructure. Treatment plants and the pressure pumps that carry water to high-rise buildings depend on an electrical supply that, as we have seen, is collapsing. But there is something more serious: maintenance. Water pumps suffer from airlocks or overheating that require an operator to see a pressure gauge and turn a valve. Without those eyes, the systems lock for safety or simply burn out. In modern cities, water does not arrive by gravity, it arrives by energy, and energy requires vision. As bodies begin to suffer from the lack of hydration, the nervous system of humanity, the internet, enters its final death throes. During the first hours, networks were flooded with billions of voice notes. "I can't see anything, help, children, where are you?" This data tsunami saturated the bandwidth. But the coup de grace is not the traffic, but the heat. The data centers that sustain the cloud are massive warehouses full of servers that generate volcanic heat. They depend on liquid cooling systems and airflows visually monitored by technicians and sensors that no one can manage now. When the electrical system flickers and backup generators fail to start correctly, or when cooling systems stop due to lack of water, the servers begin to melt. Web pages die one by one. Wi-Fi signals disappear. Smartphones, which already had low batteries after hours of desperate use as useless flashlights, shut down. The digital silence is absolute. There are no longer messages of comfort, nor news, nor contact with the outside. Humanity is now truly alone in its own skin. In the streets, the air becomes heavy. Without water for cleaning systems and with the first electrical fires raging out of control, the smell of smoke and waste begins to float over the cities. People, driven by a growing thirst that clouds judgment, begin to do the unthinkable: drink from toilet tanks, fish tanks, or puddles in the street, unaware that they are inviting the next phase of chaos, the sanitary collapse. The psychology of confinement and auditory looting. The human brain, which processes 80% of its information through the eyes, enters a state of psychosis when points of reference disappear. Without the horizon, without the sunlight hitting the facades or the color of the signs, the sense of balance fails. People walk pressed against walls, shuffling their feet, but upon reaching a corner or an open space, panic consumes them. They feel the ground disappearing or the walls closing in on them. It is the collapse of architectural sanity. In this scenario, hearing becomes the dominant sense, but it is a treacherous one. Sounds are magnified and distorted. The roar of a distant fire sounds like a beast approaching. The echo of footsteps on the pavement is confused with a chase. This reactive hyperhearing triggers cortisol levels, keeping the population in a permanent state of alert that prevents sleep and exhausts mental reserves. The need for supplies leads to the formation of the first hordes. Auditory looting is a dantesque experience. People guide themselves by the shattering of a storefront. If someone breaks a glass, the sound acts as a dinner bell for hundreds of nearby people who converge toward the crash. Inside the supermarkets, the chaos is total. There are no lines, there are no registers, only the brushing of sweaty bodies and the clashing of metal against metal. People fight to the death over a can without knowing what it contains. It could be tomato soup or dog food. At this point, it doesn't matter. Touch is the only judge of value. Screams of pain are heard when someone cuts themselves on broken glass, followed by the sound of others stepping over them, unable to see the injured person. Empathy has died because the gaze, which is the basis of human recognition, has been extinguished. The collapse of the vital supply chain. 7 days after the Great Blackout, hunger has ceased to be an annoyance to become a destructive force that is devouring the foundations of terrestrial biology. What happens outside the cities is, perhaps, more tragic than what happens inside them. Industrial agriculture and livestock farming, designed as precision machines, have ground to a halt. In automated farms, the cascade effect preys on the most innocent. Millions of animals, cows, pigs, birds, are locked in industrial warehouses whose feeding and ventilation systems depend on electricity. When the grid fails and there is no one who can see to operate the generators or simply open the doors, the air runs out. The sound of millions of animals agonizing from thirst and heat is a dull lament that echoes through the countryside, followed by a putrid silence that attracts pests that no one can control now. The food of the near future is rotting in its cages. Meanwhile, in the cities, the sky has become a chemical nightmare. Without firefighters who can see to drive their trucks or aim their hoses, accidental fires, caused by forgotten candles, short circuits, or gas leaks, have joined together to form megafires. The air becomes unbreathable. Ash falls like black snow over people trying to breathe through damp rags, walking through streets where the heat from burning buildings is their only map. But the most insidious threat is invisible and silent: the cores of nuclear reactors. Around the world, plants have entered automatic, safe shutdown mode, but this safety is temporary. Reactors need constant cooling to dissipate the residual heat from spent fuel. Without operators to visually monitor water levels in the cooling pools, and with backup generators running out of fuel, the temperature begins to rise. Somewhere in Europe or Asia, a relief valve opens, releasing radioactive steam into the air. It is not a cinematic explosion, it is a silent meltdown. Radiation begins to leak into the atmosphere, a threat that no one can see, smell, or feel, until the metallic taste in the mouths of survivors indicates that the air itself has become their executioner. The supply chain has not only broken, it has vaporized. There are no longer trucks transporting grain, nor ships unloading containers. The world has fragmented into islands of darkness surrounded by danger. Humanity is no longer fighting to recover its former life, but to prevent its own body from being consumed by the environment it built itself. Chaos has reached 70%, and the Earth, once domesticated, now feels like a hostile and alien planet. The winter of humanity. 90 days have passed. The world we knew, that vibrant fabric of lights, screens, and colors, has been buried under a layer of rotten silence and ash. Upon reaching the third month, humanity has not only lost its sight, it has lost its numbers. The world population has plummeted. Millions have succumbed to starvation, many others to the fevers of waterborne diseases that no one can filter anymore, and a heartbreaking portion has chosen suicide as the only way out of a prison of eternal blackness. The cities, once jewels of engineering, are now hotbeds of plague. Without functional sewage systems, human waste floods basements and low-lying streets, contaminating the few remaining water wells. The air, already heavy with the smoke from fires dying out for lack of fuel, now reeks of decomposition. The cascade effect has reached its final biological stage. The corpses that no one can see to bury become a feast for rats and feral dogs, which multiply without control, becoming the new predators of the avenues. In this social winter, nature has begun its reconquest. Without constant human maintenance, tree roots burst through the asphalt and climbing plants cover the skyscrapers. For the survivors, the forest and the city are now the same, a hostile environment where every step is a risk of a fall or an encounter with a hungry animal. The human being has regressed 10,000 years in its social structure in barely a quarter. Citizens no longer exist, only clans of blind gatherers moving in compact groups, tied together by ropes so as not to get lost, living in a state of alertness that has erased any trace of culture or art. Technology, the great pride of our species, is now useless scrap. A billion-dollar communication satellite continues to orbit the Earth, sending signals to receivers that no one can operate. Data centers are mausoleums of cold silicon. Smartphones, those black mirrors that once dominated our lives, are now used as stones to crush roots or as sharp objects. We have become the heirs of a civilization of gods who could see, living among the ruins of a magic we no longer understand.